You probably know about the Entertainment Community Fund, but I'm going to remind you. Founded in 1882, the fund is a national human services organization that fosters stability and resiliency and provides a safety net for performing arts and entertainment professionals over their lifespan. The fund is here to meet the needs of our entertainment community with a unique understanding of the challenges involved in a life in the arts. In addition to career management services, the fund provides emergency financial assistance, affordable housing, healthcare and insurance counseling, senior care, and more. This three-part series with Jamal is made possible by funding from the New York State Council on the Arts, with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature, along with a donation from Callie Nguyen. Please note and share with your networks that today's conversation and the following two webinars will be recorded for future audiences. And you'll find out about how to get, we'll make sure to follow up with you on how to get those links. Now about Jamal, and these are words from Jamal, a Los Angeles native. Jamal began serious training at the Lula Washington Dance Theater. He holds dual degrees in dance performance and TV radio communications from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, where he performed with the Dallas Black Theater, Dance Theater, and Fort Worth Dallas Ballet, among others. Later, Jamal danced with Donald Byrd, the group, Madonna's 2001 Drowned World Tour, Complexions, and as an aerialist and dancer, shares Living Proof, the Farewell Tour. He has since performed in The Color Purple and Motown the Musical on Broadway, serving as a dance captain on both. An avid choreographer, Jamal has set works on several companies, taught as a full-time professor and interim at the University of Missouri, Kansas, and co-chairs the SAG-AFTRA National Dancers Committee. Jamal continues his advocacy for educating young artists about the changing landscape of dance and has written two books, 1234 and Toss in the Ether, both available on his website, jamalstory.com. Additionally, Jamal is 1/3 of the host panel for Beyond the Thread, an online forum dedicated to unpacking and deconstructing conversations that happen on the social media threads in a more conversational way. Also on jamalstory.com/media. Jamal also participates on the Dancers Resource Advisory Council here at the fund. Today's topic is what is dance careering in the US? And we love coming up with that word, right, Jamal?
We really did.
Careering is a verb.
Yes, yes. To career. We wanted to add it. People are making up new language for the lexicon all the time. So
yeah. So while we won't be seeing you today, we do want to know your questions. So please feel free to enter the questions into the Q&A feature you see at the bottom of your screen. And as we go along, our team will be looking and seeing and interrupting us if they think there's a question that we should take on the spot. But please make sure to let us know what's on your mind. So our first topic that we were going to, first of all, Jamal, tell us what you're doing now, because it just, bring us up to date.
Good question. I am in Dallas right now, which is sort of full circle. As you said, my alma mater, SMU, is here in Dallas. And I am dancing for the Dallas Opera. I'm one of the dancers doing Romeo and Juliet, their production of Romeo and Juliet, which has been fantastic. This has been 5 weeks here in Dallas, and I'm here at my cousin's, Rosalind's story, who was a violinist with the Fort Worth Symphony ordinarily, but moonlights at the Dallas Opera. And a few years ago, we were able to both be in Pearl Fisher's. Well, she was playing it, and I was on stage. And so that was sort of an exciting moment. I am in her sort of office studio, and this is her library behind me. I said, "This is great, Rosalind. We're gonna do it. This is awesome in every way."
Well, that's great. So, and what about, just a little bit of how this artist in residence grant came about. Can you?
Well, so part of it, I've been courting the fund for a while about, you know, something beyond what I do with the Dancers Resource Advisory Council already. I was trying to figure out how to go further with this to get whatever I have or whatever I know available as a resource tangibly that the fund could offer. And so that was the beginning of it. And then there was that grant that came up, a really, really big one, money being given to artists in New York specifically to keep us in New York. And it was about partnering with an organization of some sort and working for that organization in a way that it was sort of feasible and humanity driven, and yet still leaving space very deliberately and intentionally to do the craft, whatever the craft is, so that you know, we can keep New York as cool as it is, which I'm glad a lot of people with money agree that we are part of the reason, artists. So but apparently they didn't agree that this was the perfect marriage. We did. I said,
Yes, we did.
yeah. And so we tried that and it didn't quite work out, but you know, I'm so happy that the fund decided, you know what, let's still go forward with it. Let's let's make it happen. So I have a friend, Collie Wynn, who wanted to throw some resources at this and did, and I'm ever so gracious with that, and I thank him. And that combined with some other big efforts on your part, on your side, got us here. So
Yeah.
I'm so happy that we're able to do this, and I want more organizations to sort of partner with artists to get this information out. And whatever information, it doesn't necessarily have to be about the business aspect of it or the careering part of dance. That's definitely something that I've been focused on for quite a long time. But there's so many different aspects of how to have an artist career nowadays, and I'm sure that a lot of my colleagues have jewels to offer.
Yeah, and so you've learned it by doing it,
Yes.
and part of it is that you have the mentor gene, which
Hmm.
is, comes as you develop. Is like, how can I give back what I've learned from my own experience? So
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
with the nitty gritty. The
Hmm.
nitty gritty was the discussion of unions, collective bargainings, contracts, just your experience of figuring that out.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, it's just hearing you say it. I have to be honest. Hearing it come out of your mouth at me. You know, this is the unions. Even now, as I sit, well, I did sit on the board of SAG-AFTRA in New York at one point. Even now, I still go, you know, it's
Not
a full,
me.
and I'm doing it. So there's a certain level of resonance it has for me in the space of relating to other dancers who are out there. I have not forgotten what it was to first get a letter or notification from SAG-AFTRA that I needed to take action. And I had no idea what well, it was actually SAG at the time. This was before the
Right.
merge of those two unions, SAG and after Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, I believe. I think that's
Yep.
correct.
Yeah.
Those two were separate unions at the time that I started dancing professionally. And I remember getting something from SAG saying you need to, there's some accountability financially that you have to us. And I remember being horrified and overwhelmed with, frustration. Someone else wants more money from me. Oh my God, so that perspective, that sort of kind of, who is this juggernaut over here? That feeling is something that I had right off the bat, and so I understand why a lot of dancers coming into the field look at it as sort of an evil and not necessarily a necessary evil. And a lot of that just had to do with my lack of understanding about it. Those two unions merged, SAG and AFTRA, and I mean, they're, depending on whom you ask, you might get some widely varying ideas on whether or not that was a good thing. But what I can say most people agree on is that when unions merge, or when bodies that are that big kind of come together, then it creates for the other side, for the people that we're working for the employers, less opportunity, hopefully, for them to be to take advantage of us, to take advantage of our talent and our skill and our work. You know, it goes back to that whole idea of come together and be a stronger force than, you know, doing it individually. So when I came to the to the professional field, I had a hard time reconciling that, particularly because so much of the work that I was doing didn't fall under any particular, you know, one union. If
Well, let
I
me interrupt you for a second. When the SAG letter came, what was the work that it was relating to?
I had done my third or fourth small job, and I think this one was a television appearance,
Mhm.
perhaps, and it wasn't even a lot of dancing, but it was one day I was on set, and I was paid for it, and it was the job that now it's come to our attention that you've worked however many
Yeah.
jobs it was at that
Yeah.
time. The rules have changed slightly. It's been years ago.
Mhm.
But I had worked however many jobs was the curfew at the time before I had to, you know, join or at least pay the initiation fee for those services. And I didn't understand what that was about. It was a healthy amount of money at the time. Maybe it was 2 grand or 1,500 at that time. And the thing that bugged me so much is that I had no reference point for why. I have, of course, since learned so much about how all of that works, and that the idea it's a one-time fee. You pay it, and then you pay modest dues, mostly reflective of how much work you've done under contracts that were bargained by SAG-AFTRA specifically. And once I got past that initiation fee, everything was fine.
Yeah.
It just took me getting past that. There's financing now for it and all kinds of ways that the union helps with that. But what the big lesson for me, or the big understanding that I did not have at the time, is that what you're paying for when you're paying those dues, and the reason that the union has their hand out for that, is that the union is providing the pathway for the contracts that we are working under them to be negotiated and bargained every so many years. And the disservice or the unfairness is that if I'm on set and I'm working on one of those contracts, and all of the other people on set have paid for those contracts to be negotiated, then at some point I don't get to just be there on their dimes. At some point, after the third gig or the fourth gig or the fifth gig, or at some point, I need to also be paying with those other people that I'm working with under that contract, because all of the power and the provisions inside of it are guaranteed because of the negotiation process. I had no idea that there was such a process going on with the unions and the film studios or the record labels, depending on what contract it is. I had no idea that was, or the Producers League, if we're dealing with equity. I had no idea that was what was going on. So this idea of the union sort of sitting across the table from the people who got together with their lawyers and who are actually employing us, and then negotiating to come up with minimum rates that are acceptable. That's not something that I knew about. And then when I got on a negotiating committee, then I got to really understand how desperately the lawyers representing these employers don't want to pay anything
No
beyond
kidding.
what they're paying now. And this is
Yeah.
every single time. There's a part of me, and I think there are a lot of people at the union, this is, you know, one of the arguments, there's a part of me that wishes dancers could hear bits and pieces of those conversations so that they understand what we're doing when we're fighting for these contracts to be as strong and impenetrable financially as they can be for us.
Mhm.
And that they're fighting for the same thing on the other side. SAG-AFTRA does it that way, collective bargaining. That's what we call it, collective bargaining. And we call them bargaining partners because the idea is that they are going to come to the table in good faith and we're going to come to the table in good faith. And then we're representing all of the people, you know, inside of our industry who work these contracts, and you're representing all of the studios, or most of the studios that wield these contracts. And we're going to have a nice civil conversation about what that work is worth, right? Equity does a similar version. Actors Equity does a similar version of negotiating with the Producers League. The producers come together. They, they review the contract with their lawyer. They, have it out. They figure out on their side what they want, what the goals of the negotiation are. We do the same thing on the equity side. I say we, and I'll tell you why in a second, but we do the same thing on the equity side. I don't sit on any of those negotiating committees or on that board. And we duke it out with them to come up with the production contract, for Broadway shows, or the tour, the CETA, short engagement touring agreement, which is a whole other story, or any other contracts, any number of contracts that we work under that union. And so that process goes on there. I say we very specifically because what became clear as I did more union work or work with the unions is that we are the union, really, meaning the union is comprised of its members. Yeah, so if you're paying your initiation fee and then you're paying your dues, then you're actually paying to have a seat at the table, because it's our union. This is actually, the people who are making the decisions, who are in the board meetings, who are on the committees, who are weighing in, who are delegates at the convention every year. These are members. These are actors and broadcasters and singers and recording artists and dancers. This is the union. It's for us. The lawyers and the people who are doing it are negotiating it on our behalf. So we're the union. It's not an entity outside. So when I say we, and I'm referring to we in the context of equity this time, I mean we are fighting because I'm also an equity member. So I'm wanting to sort of encourage the idea of ownership of these unions. It's not SAG-AFTRA is something outside of you, or that equity is over here. No, it actually belongs to us. So if you have a grievance or a gripe with something in the contract, then yeah, you have a pathway to start to at least get it addressed somewhere, even if it doesn't get answered on the other side. At least you have a place that you can start to address those things. And both of those unions, SAG-AFTRA and Actors Equity, certainly do a lot to make those pathways available to members, and to promulgate, like, hey, come to the meeting, come to the whatever, come to the what, because it's us, it's our union, it's ours.
So what is this just you? It was your impulse. I joined this thing. I'm going to find out what it is. I mean,
No.
People just don't wake up and say, I'm going to get active in my union. I mean,
no. Oh, absolutely they don't. And I will admit, I am no different than most dancers who have been slain by the burden of administrating our careers in all the other ways, so much so that the last thing I'm interested in doing is taking on whatever that is with unions and supporting those efforts. That said, Mike Hodge, who is no longer with us, but a brilliant man, was a beautiful human being, and a wonderful actor, whom I found out later on that I saw in Fences with James Earl Jones when he played his son. I found that years after. I was maybe 16 when I saw it, and said, oh my God. Anyway, this man got in touch with me on Facebook and said, I've been paying a lot of attention to you and your work, and I'm the president of the New York local SAG-AFTRA board, and I would love to have a conversation. Would you let me take you to lunch? Well, sure. So in between shows on a Saturday, I think I was doing, oh God, I must have been doing Motown, maybe. I'm not sure. This was many years ago. This was shortly after the merger of SAG and AFTRA. And he took me to lunch and he says, I think that you're doing incredible things. I've seen you. We were on the Color Purple tour together. I know I was there for a hot minute as a vacation swing. And he said, I saw you in that capacity and I see how you deal with people. I think you would be great for our board to sit in the dancer seat. What do you say? And I mean, what could I say? I mean, well, at that point I was, yes, of course. Why wouldn't I? And then after he got my yes, and I felt really good about it, I got a call from Rebecca Damon, who later became the executive vice president for the union and now is staff. She had me come to the movie theater and says, okay, so here you just got to get this this petition signed. And I went, a petition? Right. It's cursory. It's cursory. And during the course of that, I realized, oh, I am running for a board seat. You all have bamboozled me successfully into a political moment in this union. Well played. Well played. You get a luminary, superstar, brilliant, well-respected actor and president of the union to ask, I'm going to say yes, which, worked brilliantly. Here's this Black man I respect incredibly. And he's saying, you're gonna be on the board, but not until we go through this process. Oh, and by the way, it's really contentious, this process. And the people, and there's another side, and they hate us. Oh, when you come to the boardroom, people are gonna be sitting at tables like we're in high school. Just don't pay any attention to that. It was so much. It was so much. But that's how I got but then after having been in it for so long, for a while actually, not even so long, I understood the reasons that it was necessary to go about it that way. And now I too try to find whatever ways I can to drag any of the intelligent, and by intelligent I mean people who are intelligent about this kind of thing or interested in this kind of thing and intelligent about it. I guess both of those things have to be there. Drag them to, hey, why don't you come to this meeting with me? Or hey, won't you listen? I just want to just come and have coffee. I just want to run some things, but I do the same thing because I know that if I jump into this is actually what it is, people will run, and they should,
So right now, are you holding any offices right now?
No. I'm not holding any offices. This is the first time in many years that I'm not on the local board of SAG-AFTRA. But part of it is that when I was on the local board, it put me on the roster of people to swing into the national board meeting should there be vacancies and absences. And so I think I was Billy Porter last term for the national, whenever he wasn't able to make it. So I was doing quite a bit, and this has been a great moment of kind of relief. I am still co-chair of the National Dancers Committee for the union, though. So Danielle Town is the other chair. She's the better chair actually, and she's in Los Angeles. She heads Dancers Alliance, which is a grassroots organization that runs as a liaison between the community and the brokers that affect our careers directly, particularly in this professional careering way that we're discussing today.
So in the topic of unions and collective bargaining and contracts, was there anything else, other point you wanted to make today?
Yes. I kind of hit on we kind of organically hit on SAG-AFTRA and Actors Equity. Equity being the union that deals mostly with live performances, in a really big way and in large scale. Equity and SAG-AFTRA they do their bargaining with the partners pretty much the same way, as I said. AGMA, on the other hand, is a union that doesn't quite work that way because it's not collective bargaining oriented. What happens with AGMA, a lot of dance companies, the Ailey Company, I want to say Ballet Hispanico, American Ballet Theater, New York City Ballet, these are AGMA companies. And the way that works is AGMA facilitates the negotiation of the contract between the artists who work for the organization and management inside of the company. So the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, for example, those dancers will come together and have their own sort of exploratory meeting. What do we not like in this contract? What needs to be better for next year? What do we like? What do we want to keep, et cetera? And then AGMA will help facilitate that meeting with the management at Ailey to address those concerns and issues. If there's an impasse, then we get to, maybe we're going to strike. Maybe we're going to, but it's a little different in the case with Ailey, the way that they indicated to management that they were not happy with the then status of the contract, was to not show up for the post-show portion of the gala, the fundraising gala. They very, very grandly did not show up for that. And you know, that was a clear indication that, hey, you know, this could get worse. This could get worse. So just know that we're serious. This is not in our contracts. It's not something we're required to do. So we're not going to do it. However, we do know that sitting next to the patrons and the folks, and you know, hobnobbing with them and being at the table and dining and all that stuff does get the money in the purse. So they use it as leverage, and so that works a little differently because it's in-house. It also means that each one of those contracts, the Ailey contract and the ABT contract, and you know, the Ballet Hispanico contract, and the opera contract. I'm on an AGMA contract right now here in Dallas.
Yeah.
Those contracts will all be slightly different because they were negotiated in-house, you know. So that's the big difference with AGMA. And then AGVA, American Guild of Variety Artists, also has similar negotiating strategies and practices. This would be a lot of the Cirque shows at one point were AGVA. I don't know that they still are, but
It's Radio City, I think.
Radio City, I've been quite vexed about because my agent has dancers on AGMA contracts at Radio City. However, I do know that Radio City had at one point, perhaps still does, I'm not really sure how, had a relationship with AGVA. There were at one point there were AGMA contracts there at Radio City. My understanding is that they're AGMA, but either way, those unions both negotiate the same way with their constituency, with their constituencies. So that's the thing to know about that. If I had to pick it on a test, I'd say AGMA because my agent is actually doing the work with these contracts and clients, and that was my thought process. I was corrected by the rep for one of the business reps for the Rockettes at another panel that I curated a while back. So I'm gonna say AGMA is Radio City as well, and know that I could be wrong on that one. But the point is the point of the conversation was understanding how they negotiate and how they work for the dancers in those contexts.
Good. Is any other final things about the contract business?
About the I guess the big thing, and I want to leave some room for questions because I know I can almost guarantee based on the people here that there will be some on this. The big overarching idea is that the unions are there to support us. That the big challenge is that certainly SAG-AFTRA and Equity for sure have AGMA's again different because it's in-house, but SAG-AFTRA and Equity provide pathways for members to pension and health. And of course, the challenge is that both have different requirements for how much work you have to do, how much work covered work under those unions you have to do to qualify for the pension and health. For SAG-AFTRA, it's a monetary amount. I think it's $10,000. It was at one point $10,000 of covered work that you have to make under the union before you qualify for the healthcare. For equity, I think it's 12 weeks, 11 weeks. They go based on the number of weeks you've worked versus the amount of money that you've earned under covered contracts. But either way, there is a pathway. Both of them provide pathways to retirement. What else to say about that? Just that that the big problem, the big challenge that I've had careering is that over the majority of years that I've worked as a dancer, I have not made enough money from either union, or
Any
I'm
one,
not able to satisfy either condition to have access to the healthcare, except with equity when I was in a Broadway show. Both times that I was in Broadway shows, I was able to do it there with no issues whatsoever. But if you're doing workshops and things like that, you might do a 4-week workshop 1 year and then not do anything else equity that year, you know, or you could do an AGMA job. I mean, I think last year, I was either last year or 2019, I can't remember which, the first time that I worked in many years, did covered work under all 3 of those unions. AGVA was the only one that I did not have any covered work under. And then the other piece of it is understanding that in a larger context, from a 30,000-foot view, the idea is that all of these unions are part of the AFL-CIO. They are all part of the labor movement in this country, which is designed to make sure that you are actually being paid what you're worth for the work that you're doing, right? A lot of companies outsource to other countries where things are a lot less expensive, where labor is a lot cheaper, and the mandates that involve making sure that people are taken care of outside of the job, you know, after the job, health-wise, pension-wise, are not required. So a lot of companies will do the business over there. That's something most of us know. But the idea is, if they could do it here in the States, they would. And so the labor movement in this country is designed to make sure that they don't, that it doesn't become, you know, we're dancing around for $10, you know, or not just that, or we're teaching kids at a unified school district for $10. You know, that's what the unions are designed to do. So SAG-AFTRA and Equity and AGVA and these unions they're all doing the same thing that the other unions are trying to do, in making sure that people are actually getting livable wages for the work that we do, and that there's standards that make sense for the time that we're in, that there's inflation protection inside of pay schedules, things like that. This is what the unions in this country are geared toward and trying to do. So it's important to know that the union that has helped get the contracts out that we're working is part of something bigger that has been in existence for a very, very, very long time. The other advantage is understanding that if you are part of a union that is part of the AFL-CIO, then you get access to the Union Plus membership page, which is a sort of it's sort of a hodgepodge. It's an odyssey of discounts and offers from different companies, you know, car rental discounts and airline upgrade opportunities, and, you know, just there's a parking discount for people who fly in and out of LAX and need to pay the parking for however long, for a week or a weekend or whatever. You can get discounts on the Union Plus page for that. So there are other gets, and I always tell dancers when they look at that initiation fee and they balk, I go, well, yeah, you're going to get all of that back if you go to this page and exploit the discounts they're on. Also, the credit union. I know that Equity has one. SAG-AFTRA has one too. They'll do things like help you finance your car, help you finance your house, things that, you know, they understand that we're independent contractors and that a lot of us are doing 1099s. So whereas a bank would look at those 1099s and go, oh yeah, we can't trust that you're going to be able to pay these bills Doesn't matter that you've been doing it all these years. We don't care. It looks like you don't make enough money. You don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. Oh, then we're no loan. The credit unions will go, we understand, and yes, here's a loan. Here's a loan for your car. So there are a whole lot of different life grabs involved in dealing with the union, so that you're not looking at it as a financial drain.
Or a tax of some kind.
Right,
Yeah.
or as an evil.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the main, that's sort of the main overarching idea with that.
Yeah, no, well done. I just wrote in the chat, but I don't know if to ask if Janae wants to comment about anything, if she saw something that she wanted to respond to, but I'm sure she'll speak up if she wants to.
She will. Apparently, I haven't I haven't had any blind spots yet. So yeah, this is good. This is good.
So we do have a comment though from Janae. It says right to work states simply means, so what the definition of right to work states, which is important,
Yes,
for
yes.
people who don't know.
There are, yes, she put it in the chat. I'm glad she mentioned it. I figured I would get a question on that one, but yes, let's jump right there. Right to work states are states where the performer does not have to be a union member to do the work. Not just the performer, anyone working can't be told that they're not allowed to work somewhere because they're not union or because they didn't join the union. You have a right to work regardless of whatever those dictates might be. We call them right to work for less states because essentially what it's saying is that you can do that job over there with that employer who is not union and wanting to pay less than what is on the union paper. That is basically what it is. Either they're not wanting to pay the rate that has been agreed upon inside of the industry by the practitioners who are doing it. They either don't want to pay that or they don't want to pay for anything ancillary. We don't want to pay your health insurance. We don't care. We don't want to deal with a pension. We don't care. We just want the work done. Well, yes. So then we have a right to go and work for those employers at those rates, but we say right to work for less because that's what you're doing. You have a right to not make all of the money and all of the things because you need to make, whatever it is. And usually that comes out of an exploitation of the times are hard kind of mandate that happens with living every day, not making millions of dollars. Times are hard, inflation is real. So can I afford to not do that gig over there just because it's non-union? Right? It becomes that conversation. But you have to know that anytime you're doing that, what you're doing is contributing to those employers getting to have you for less. And so it diminishes your value on the ledger. And by value, I mean your literal value in terms of the amount of money you cost on a budget, because that's what they're looking at. They get to have it for less. And so, and God knows I understand. As I sit here as a union steward, I have done non-union work before. I try not to do it now if I can help it, or I try to turn the work. If I want to do a project that is non-union, then I understand all the financial reasons that it is non-union, and I'll consult SAG-AFTRA and say, hey, listen, what do we have in terms of short budget agreements or short budget language that could work for this to make it a union gig? And that has happened. That works. As soon as the employer understands that it won't cost him, her, them any more money to make it a SAG-AFTRA gig so that we can do it without any kind of punitive measures being taken, then they'll do it. They'll do it. So that's also, I want to say this, there is a difference between non-union work and non-jurisdictional work, right? When we're dealing with non-jurisdictional work, we're dealing with work that isn't covered by anybody because it doesn't fall under the jurisdiction of coverage, right? So a lot of us work conventions. We'll do, we'll go out and do, several weekends of convention work, and it's teaching. It falls under education. So the education is not something that is organized under SAG-AFTRA equity, ag, none of those unions. It's that these are performing unions, right? So if you happen to be on a convention and there's a performance, I danced in the show, the faculty show, right? Then yes, there's a performance piece of it, but the actual job in the contract are for teaching. So then that doesn't become jurisdictional work. It isn't non-union to do that job. And that's something to understand. Covered union, we have to look at the work itself and figure out if it falls, if it's covered under any union. If it's covered under a union already and we're doing it over here and there's no union involved, then it's not union. But if it's not, if it doesn't fall under anything, if it's not if it isn't organized somewhere, then it would be non-jurisdictional. It's not in the jurisdiction of SAG-AFTRA or Equity or AGMA or AGVA. So it's a totally different thing, and that's something important to know. Yes, Janaea said, working under a CBA, we've pre-negotiated minimum rates and working conditions that productions have to abide by, which includes things like paying into health and pension on top of your wages, your gross wages, and then filing grievances on your behalf. That's true. If payment is late, getting residuals to you, the union, SAG-AFTRA, is that there is an entire pipeline and system designed to get residuals to the performers. That pipeline, I think it involves 5 at one point, 5 or 6 different payroll companies, because you're dealing with for residuals all of these different film studios who do it differently, and then it goes through a process at SAG-AFTRA, and then your check comes out of that process. And then at one point, the goal was to make that process more streamlined, and I think the union has finally gotten to a place where it is much more streamlined than it was. Working non-union, you have no protection, no guarantee turnaround of pay, no one to file a grievance. If you do the work over there and it's non-union, then you don't get paid, or you get paid less, or they just decide, you know what, we ran out of money. That's unfortunate. Bye. Then you don't have any recourse because it's non-union. If it's union, you get to call SAG-AFTRA and say, hey, listen, this is what's happening. You get to file a claim, or same with equity. There are pathways to making sure that they abide by whatever was pre-negotiated in those negotiations that your dues pay for, along with all the other services.
Nicely round up there.
You like that? I like that. Write that down. Somebody write that down.
That's good. We'll get a transcript of that.
Exactly.
So, other topics that we came up for today, that was really the heavy duty one. That's like the nuts and bolts, and your taxes must be so much fun to prepare, Jamal. It's like, but we don't have to talk about that.
Well,
but
we're gonna deal with some of that in the money and ethics session.
Okay, we're gonna talk about that.
Right, but I will
for next time.
But still, I will say in this session, the taxes, and one of the things I'll deal with is that, of course, when you're filing in all of these, if you're on a tour, and God knows anyone who is watching this who has done a tour of any kind understands this. If you have made money in other states, then now you have to file in those states. If the amount of money is over whatever the threshold is that the state says, you're over, so you have to file here, right? So my taxes get crazy for that reason, but also I have an LLC to mitigate the tax responsibility that I have as an individual, which would be extraordinarily high because of the number of 1099s I have as an independent contractor. And so the ways to deal with that as a contractor, I'll definitely go over in the other session.
Oh, that's very helpful.
But
all right,
yeah,
so that's a little teaser for.
Yes.
So we had talked about barriers and struggles around the body.
Yes. And when I remember we were having that conversation, and then I started to do some homework on how to best discuss it. And what I realized is that most of it is individual and wrapped up in what kind of dance career you want to have, right? There's a body maintenance aspect of this, right? The one that involves what do you need to do to keep your instrument as healthy as it can possibly be to facilitate whatever the work is that you're doing, right? And then there's the what do I need to look like? And by the what do I need to look like piece, this is now where I'm dealing, well, I guess I'm not really dealing mostly with the commercial realm, because these mandates exist also inside of concert dance. They just play out differently. But the idea that we are in the performing and visual arts, and that there is an expectation that we be fetching, otherwise who's going to want to look at us? All of that plays into the politics individually of what am I going to do about my body? Like what does it need to look like? Understanding that those values for what it needs to look like shift depending on what kind of work you're doing. You know, so if I'm doing aerial work, then part of it is I'm going to probably develop more upper body just as a function of I've been in the air all the time. I'm doing that kind of work. But then if I'm auditioning for a ballet company, or I'm auditioning for a dance company, I may not want to be that robust. Do you know what I mean? I may not want to have all of that going on, because I'm not necessarily using it the same way as I would in an aerial context. So for me, that might be something completely different. If I'm in a pump and I'm dancing, this wouldn't be me. This would be one of the really brilliant ladies that work with me inside of Dancers Alliance, because they're all top shelf working artists. But if they're doing gigs in pumps, you know, in high heels, then how they're going to present themselves inside of that pump, what they're going to look like at the audition, how they're going to dance, what things they're going to show off on their bodies, totally different than if they were going to audition for, you know, a standard dance company, you know, and I say standard, I mean any dance company. That it might be a different ask, a different aesthetic, a different anything. So it doesn't necessarily mean change your body for every gig. It just means being aware of what it needs. What does the body need to do the gig, A, and what are they looking for you to get hired to do it, B, and do those things work together for you to do whatever that is. So I think that's the conversation about body maintenance includes all of those considerations, because, you know, you're trying to figure out that there's one aspect of it that's doing the gig, and then the other aspect of it is getting the gig, right? So all of that is a big part of it. I asked one professional friend who does a lot of commercial work, what her body things are. And I remember she said, I remember when I was doing concert dance, I wanted to be a little smaller. I wanted to be really, really lean and really, really snatched and really all of those things. And she says, but then when I got to commercial dance, I let those ideas go, because now I'm in the video. I need something else. There are other things that are working at this audition that I need to make sure are working. So I'm fine with not looking like that for these kinds of gigs, because it's a totally different environment. So some of it involves canvassing, you know, your jobs to see what you want to do and what works for you. And then the rest of it involves just maintaining the health, the physical health. What are you doing to your body? Is it physically serving you for the longevity and duration of the career, right? I'll talk about some of that in the third session, which is on sort of how do you make this go on? How do you keep it going so that you don't have to retire at 25 or 26? You know, some of that has to do with we try to make sure that the gigs that we're doing are gigs that are covered, and that there's somebody supporting us, i.e. a union, that in such a way that we're not dancing in unsafe spaces, that at least our bodies are being taken care of from the standpoint of that. Like, we're hoping that part is sorted for us. So there's that piece. And then the other part, of course, has to deal with what am I doing for myself to make sure that the actual instrument, stays viable throughout the career, right? And so those are the challenges. That's where the body challenges come in. It's not just what does it look like aesthetically, but what is it actually doing? Can it do that? And how can it do it the longest, right? Particularly now where the industry, and this gets into the changing trends, right? The
Yeah.
industry requires, when I was coming up, we could be jacks of all trade, and master of one, perhaps. I chose to go a path where I was gonna, kind of do it all, and some of it got chosen for me. To be totally fair, it wasn't an articulate plan to go. I'm gonna dance in dance companies and do concert dance, and then I want to run over here and do, a Madonna tour and be in the commercial world, and I want to jump over here and be on Broadway. That was just stuff that was, some of it was just divine. Some of it is a function of having had access to wonderful opportunities. But the big piece of it is that it all managed to happen in the space of my career, before I was 30, most of it. Nowadays, though, the career is one that it seems to me, and talking to younger dancers and dancers who are really young, just coming into it, that they feel overwhelmed with the requirement to be able to do everything. Meaning that it's no longer just, I'm going to be this kind of dancer. I'm going to do this one thing in space. Because even inside of those places where people only do that one thing, they're not doing that one thing anymore. One of the choreographers, choreographic consultant on a project that involves ballet dancers. He was asked to show, he was a principal at Paris Opera for many years, and he was asked to show kind of, well, what are they doing over there? What are they doing at Paris Opera? And of course, the expectation was that he was going to do just classical stuff, just, like we're partnering the girl, and what he showed them was, no, we're also doing this. And then he got on the floor and he started rolling around. He started doing some contemporary stuff and moving around. And the people in the front of the room went, what? This is Paris Opera Ballet, though. This is a concert dance company. And he's going, yes, this is what we're doing inside of Paris Opera Ballet. The concert dance companies are no longer doing just what it is they're saying, that they do. They're not just, the ballet companies are not just doing classical ballet anymore. So now even those dancers who said, I want to be a ballet dancer, that's what I'm doing, are having to step out and get all of this other information in their bodies to use there. Similarly, the job that I just mentioned that involves a ballet consultant from Paris Opera Ballet is a commercial dance job. It's a job that, that agents would have sent people out on. So, and not to say that ballet hasn't infiltrated commercial dance before. Obviously it has. This is not new. I mean, we have the turning point from back in the day, back in the day. But the point that I'm making is, nowadays there isn't as much clear separation. Dancers are coming out into the professional workspace with all kinds of extra things at their disposal, and tools and tricks in their belt, because that's now the ask. You kind of have to do all of the things anymore. And so that has been a huge shift from when I first started dancing to now, that vexes a lot of young dancers, because they're trying to figure out, how do I get access to all of the things? Who's teaching the aerial class then? And where can I, do I need to go get some tumbling, or do I need to go learn capoeira, or do I need to learn, salsa, merengue? Like, what do I need? And the answer is, who knows? It just changes depending on the job. And that also gets into this idea of branding, right? Because now also your social media is a part of your hireability. What either you have employers who are looking at your social media to find out who you are, or they're looking at it to see if there's anything on it that will be problematic for their brand or their company or their establishment or whatever they're trying to push out. And just so that we're clear, there are many different definitions, I think, out there floating around on brand, like what it means to be a brand. But basically, a brand is a promise to your customers, followers, constituency, whomever, that tells them what they can expect from you as far as your products and services, whatever it is you're putting out there. And what social media has done is make all of us individual brands. Yeah, because we're on social media curating our existence in the public space, right? And so if that's what we're doing, then we set ourselves up as brands. And then that brings about its own set of challenges, right? Because if I'm branding a certain way, then I need to make sure that it then includes the bandwidth for all of the things that I want to do, so that when I decide I'm going to add this, everyone doesn't go, I'm sorry, who are you? That's not why I signed up. This isn't why I did this. It's the best example I can think of, or some similar. It may not be a great example, but Lululemon. So if you go and you buy those Lululemon pants, right, you're buying them because they're workout, right? So I'm a dancer, I'm in them. Well, it's okay. If I do yoga, I can also be in them. You know, if I'm teaching a sort of an aerobics class or a fitness class of some sort at a gym, I can Lululemon, it also works. It's all yes. The minute Lululemon says we're gonna do suits, well, okay, you're branded as a workout, exercise, etc. Like it's something physical. I need to change out of the suit and get into this so that I can do the physical thing. I'm not sure where the suit fits in. Okay, fine. But maybe they can make that work in the brand. The minute that they decide they're going to do cell phones or coffee, well, I'm not going to Lululemon for my coffee. I'm not going to them to get my cell phone. I'm just not, because that's not the brand. And so that is the thing. A version of that is the thing that we as artists coming into the space or in the space now are having to deal with. We are all individual brands. And so we have to then manage and administrate that accordingly so that we can leverage it for our careers. And I think that that's a big one. I'll say less on that at this moment, just in case there are any questions about anything I've said so far. But that brand, the brand identity, becomes something that we are forced to consider inside of our performing careers.
Yeah, and I think something about when there's the fear of getting trapped, of doing the same thing. So there's something about being able to bring your following along as you evolve, right? Yeah. I mean, that's on you. And so some will say, I like what you used to do, and I'll play the old stuff, and and then you hope you bring some along because they appreciate your creative output and trust enough to go with you another step in a new direction. So that's it's still working from the original brand, which is your creativity and your framework for things. Yeah.
Yes, I have, and I'll explore this in the second, whichever one of those, I can't remember which one. I have an entire other career. That I don't put on Instagram necessarily, because I know that brand wise it won't make sense to anybody in that context. I have an entirely other existence in that other career on another platform that I only use for Jamal's story in that context. Yeah. And a filmmaker, my cousin is a filmmaker. He's a notable filmmaker and director. And what he told me is, Jamal, people are not able in this industry to deal really with the hyphenate. We are let me qualify that. He said, we're not able to deal with the hyphenate in our memories of who the people are. If I want, he's a director, he says, if I want a really good grip, and I need a really good script consultant, and then I need a really, really good assistant director, a good AD, then I'm going to go through separately my catalog of who are all the ADs I know, and then who are all of the grips I know, and then who are all of I'm going to go through all of those things separately, he says, and then figure out, what the best is of each of those. I'm going to get that person if I can. If you're a person who does all three of those things extraordinarily well, you might fall off for me, because now I can't remember very simply in my head which one are you? Who, you know, like, what do you do? When I cataloged you in my head, if I didn't pick one and that became the thing, then when it's time to get the AD or the script consultant or the grip, if you happen to do all three, but I don't have you in my head as the goat of one, then now you fall off completely.
Well, it's such a contradiction though. You know, because you have to be able to show yourself being adaptable, flexible, and multifaceted, but we
Yes,
want you to be good at really one thing. So
right.
I'm just wondering what the advice to an up and coming performer might be. Might it be like choose the styles of dance that completely you feel now?
Well,
Uh,
the good news with dance though is that I think that because the industry is going toward expecting
okay.
dancers to do all the things, then then you don't have to
In
pick
terms
and
of
choose.
actually dancing, that's
Right,
all inclusive.
right.
Okay.
It's the
Yeah.
the hyphenate part that I'm discussing is the part that involves I am a dancer, but I'm also I'm also
Real estate sales agent.
right, right. Or I'm a dancer, but I also am a craftsperson who makes pottery, or I
Right,
make trinkets, or I make
right,
clothes. I
right.
design clothes. I'm a fashion person, but I'm also a dancer. There are obviously places of intersection, especially in that example, the
Yeah.
fashion, the
And
designer
design. Yeah.
designer and the dancer, yes, there are places that we can intersect so that the brand doesn't get distorted at all,
Yeah.
right? This is an extension of, or this is an offshoot of, but I mean specifically in the idea of I do several different things that are not necessarily related and I do them well. What my director cousin was saying is yes, but you just have to remember that people aren't good necessarily at cataloging it that way.
Yeah.
And by people, I mean the people who have been here long enough, not in the space of a hyphenate culture,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I mean, I am confident that young millennials and Generation Zers will do it in spades. They'll be able to do that with no problems, because that's where this is all part of their world. But just generally speaking, the folks who are older in the food chain, not necessarily, because that's not the way that we were.
Right.
We're very, very singular, right? You're single job, single career. This is what you
Mhm.
do. The best person for that is this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's something to manage. And that's not something I necessarily have answers for, but it's definitely something to think about. Oh God, I thought I was gonna make it through here. Here goes. Here goes.
Oh, it's very cute. So,
And yeah,
I mean, I'm just saying.
thank
Um,
you. Thank you.
but
That was a good.
uh, but it's also you learn by observing what's going on. I mean, part of this is really paying attention to who is the flavor of the month and what is being approved of and what is being spotlighted. And you know, you have to look outward, right, in terms of
Yeah.
this landscape, the changing landscape.
Yes. I see a comment about the social media
Yeah.
portion. It's another job to manage the brand with so much social media platforming. Yeah, it is. It's true. There's so many different places that we have to show up in order to sell whatever it is we're selling, right? And speaking of selling, I'm gonna get back to that because I think the social media portion wraps up in it. But the idea of selling the thing, uh, one of the things that came up in a session I did at the International Association of Blacks in Dance conference and festival, I curated a conversation about commercial dance. Well, there are a few actual panels on commercial dance. But one of the things was, what is the definition of commercial dance? And I thought that was an interesting question. Mine was a little broader, to say that commercial dance is any dancing that is done to support something else that is being sold. So if I'm if I am in a Broadway show, the show is the star, and I am supporting it. The dance is supporting that. If it's J-Lo and she's an artist out there and she's doing well anything, and they're dancers, the dancers are being hired to support the brand that is J-Lo and the selling of whatever that is to the consumer, right? If it's a commercial, then the dance is used to support that. If it's a television show, then the dance is used to support the narrative or the whatever. But it's not about the dancing per se, right? And one of the other panelists, LaVonna Duncan, said that for her, commercial dance is designed. It's dance designed to sell something, to sell anything, to sell. What are you trying to sell? And I thought that's a great definition too. Unfortunately, there's some aspect of sales in all of it, in all of the jobs that I've done, in no matter what corner of the dance landscape they fall under, there's some aspect of sale going on inside of it. But yes, to me, the idea, there's something about the idea of what are we trying, is there a specific product that we're trying to sell? And if the answer is yes, even if that product is sex, the idea is yes, this is commercial. This becomes commercial. So I say that to say that inside of social media, your part of your brand becomes what are you selling? You know what I mean? What exactly am I putting? And if what I'm selling is a performer or a version of myself that is for consumption, then that becomes part of the function of the social media, which is why it becomes another job, because you're thinking of every aspect of this picture or this video. When am I posting it? Who's going to see it? What am I after with it? Whom am I tagging in it? Why? Whom am I not tagging in it? Why? All of that becomes a consideration for one post. Because it's your brand. It's not just I just posted this randomly. I mean, there's some of that going on, but that could be part of the brand. So it all feels deliberate. And even when it's not, the onus is on us to understand that might be the perception. You're putting out there what you want to put out there, what you want for us to see.
Right. We have another.
I'm just wondering.
Well, I think people have been using the chat rather than the Q&A, which is fine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So if there are any more, I think you've made a really good case for adaptability, but we were trying. So
definitely something there. Definitely something there with that. I mean, listen, I love the hyphenate idea. In fact, I always thought, well, I thought several of us Generation Xers, I thought we were the original multi-hyphenates. No. Okay. Well, but because we've done a whole lot of things. We have a whole lot of hustles, right? We've had a whole lot of hustles, and we've been through this. We've been through the spaces of a whole lot of hustles. We did. I mean, I don't know very many Gen Xers I've run across who have not been involved in some kind of multi-level marketing something, or at least been brought into an interest meeting for one at some point. And I say not just artists, I mean period, anybody.
yes.
So yes, there's the nowadays though, the adaptability piece, it's the only way to survive, it seems, in the industry. Is you're not going to get it all in one place. You have to be able to jump around in your career and adapt to whatever the thing is that's done. The commercial space specifically changes a lot, because if we're defining it by what it is that sells, and that changes. I mean, back in the day when I was growing up in LA, jazz was the thing that did it. Dance, that particular realm of dance was the one that was most lucrative for you to be good at, to work professionally in the commercial dance space at that time. Now, everyone understand, I've been around for a second, so when I say at that time, I mean last century. I'm talking like, so just be easy with me. This is last century jazz. Like if you look at Paula Abdul's Straight Up, or one of those, or that kind of like there's a triple pirouette, double pirouette, I mean, that kind of thing. At that time, that was going to be lucrative. That was all part of the skill set that you needed. Now, at some point over the course of it, that shifted totally to hip hop. Not that it was ever not there, not that there weren't hip hop gigs when I was coming up too, but it wasn't the majority of the work out there. I mean, it wasn't all, well, I shouldn't say it wasn't the majority. That's very subjective. It wasn't all of the work out there. Janae remembers that period too, because she might have been dancing at that time. I'm just saying, she either danced at that time or knew some people who were dancing at that time. Janae was also an agent, so that's part of the reason that I lift her in the conversation in this moment. Yeah. She was an agent before she became all the things that she is for SAG-AFTRA. And so during that time, she says, I sure do. During that time, those values were different. So you had to have those skill sets in spades to work all the time. Now it's something totally different. It was hip hop for a very, very long time. And then it was hip hop, and now hip hop and contemporary. I find contemporary is making it's showing up right now. It's showing up in a lot of dance spaces, in commercial dance spaces. What was it on? God, I can't remember. This is when all of it shows, like the brain starts to
do. It's very full. It's a full brain.
Indeed. I just saw on one of the late night shows an artist with two ballerinas behind him, point shoes, black, the whole 9 yards. But they were in point shoes. Those were ballet dancers who needed to be able to sell that idea, and it was amazing actually to sell that idea in spades. You needed to have that as a skill set. You needed to be able to get on a point shoe and then do that on a point shoe, which is different. But there it was, right there under a SAG-AFTRA contract, likely the netcode agreement. there were the two dancers behind him on point. This is a hip hop artist.
That's great.
So yeah, it's changing. I mean, it changes, but that's the whole point in the event that it got lost in all of that. The point is that it's that now whatever you're selling or whatever is being sold oftentimes informs whatever the dancing is at the time behind it.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm told it was Saturday Night Live, and it was under the network code.
Perfect. So right now we have a few minutes left, and Charm has asked a couple of questions.
Okay.
Which I'm wondering whether we want to fold into the future conversations. I mean, one of them is any recommendations for finding and selecting an agent specifically for dance, which I think might be something you want to. Can you talk quickly about that?
I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna say a few words about it now.
Another question, Charm, was about fine art selling, which is really very different. So
fine art selling, yes.
Fine arts is a very different.
It is totally different. So you're not wrong.
We're not going to talk about that now, but it's a great question. But do you want to talk about agents and getting a dancer agent?
Let's do that one for sure. Now,
and the other thing is, I'm going to put in the chat, everybody, just the information about the next time. So talk away.
Oh, and then also too, I don't know if it's still in the chat, but the basic information about unions, what their initiation fees are, how you get into them, what qualifies you to become a member. A lot of them have reciprocity, meaning if I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA already, then it avails me to membership with sister unions, Actors Equity, AGMA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that. All of that information, or not all of it, but the basic stuff is on my website. If you go to jamalstory.com, there's a tab that's called Answers. Pull that down, and there's one that says Dollars, and ish. That has all the unions on it, the logos, the stuff. Also, some different organizations and resources. Dancers Alliance is listed there. The Entertainment Community Fund is listed there, and also their corresponding websites, so that you can find that information. But to answer the question about agency, finding an agent, there are a few different ways. One is the who you know, like who are my friends and who can introduce me to someone, and can I submit that way? And then the other way is to just go to one of the agency auditions. The big ones, Block, MSA, Clear, they all have auditions periodically to look for new dancers. And you can find out where those auditions are, when and where those auditions are. The other idea, one of the things I'll say about agency that's really important is that you want to research the agent, not just the agency, if you can. I'm now, and I understand that I'm saying this from a space of a little bit of privilege. I've been around in the career long enough that I can audition agents a little bit better than some other folks could, because I have a resume that will then make me attractive to an agent. I'm also 1,000 years old, which would make me unattractive to an agent. So let's just keep that in mind too. We're talking about leverage, right? They're going, but Jamal, you're in your 40s, sir. Anyway, but the idea is that you can definitely engage. You want to engage agents and find out, as you're engaging them, if they are a good fit for you. You know what I mean? Because all of these agents have, thank you, all of these agents have, these agencies, these big agencies have a lot of folks. They have a lot of, I want to say at one point, I think this was about 10 years ago, I could be wrong, Janae, but I want to say that Block expunged 350 clients. Now, if they got rid of 350 clients, how many do they have? Who's left? Oh my goodness. How big was that pool to choose from? You have to know when you're going to agency auditions too. One of the things to consider, and this is why you don't just go to one, and why you continue to kind of pound the pavement of the whom you know portion of things, is that you got to remember, when you go to an agency audition, there may be 5 people who look just like you already there, or 3 people, or 2 people. So if you don't get chosen by that agency, it could be that you're already you as a demographic are already represented inside the agency. And if we take you on, then now what we're doing is providing yet another person for our client to compete with in the game of typecasting. So that's just one consideration. I just threw it out as an example, but I say it because I want people to look at the 30,000-foot view of agency as well. And the bigger portion of dance careering, and I'll get into this in subsequent sessions too, is in the 30,000-foot view, is not looking at yourself as just a dancer inside a cog in the wheel, but you want to understand what the wheel is doing, what the other people are doing with that wheel, so that you can understand where you fit into it. And it may be that you're not a dancer. One of the things we should have talked about, or that I should have talked about, is the social media with respect to booking jobs, and sort of how your following can influence your hireability. And I may have mentioned it a little, but it's definitely something that we can explore in the next session.
Let's make a note of that. And I want to thank everybody who registered and came and made the commitment to be part of the conversation. And Jamal, it was rich a start. And I hope all of you will. So Janae has a little agencies comment. Do your homework.
This is great. Yes. Look at their roster. See how many they have, which was just said. Don't be in competition with yourself if they have 100 you. It's true. Talk to other dancers and see how their agents work for them. In meeting with agents, always have questions prepared, such as, how are you going to stand out on their roster? That's a great question to ask. You want to audition the agent as well. It doesn't want to be one-sided, because you can get with the agency and then not have anybody advocating for you inside of it. You know, they might just be doing the very basic bare minimum. Also, part of your homework with the agencies is understanding whether or not they are able to do anything beyond the bare minimum, meaning the specific agents themselves. Janae was a good one because she understood all these contracts, and she actually worked these contracts before she started understanding and administrating them on our behalf, on behalf of the clients. So you want to definitely make sure that you're dealing with an agent who actually has some knowledge and awareness of the gig beyond, I can just send you the email for when the audition is, and I can send you the contract for management. That if that's all that they can do, well, I got that part.
You can do
So
that for yourself.
yeah, you can do that for yourself. You can do that for yourself. There's no reason to so you want to look at agency in that way. And then also, and then the other, just a little bit of the other questions, a little bit inside of concert dance. Yes, it is all about sale too, because in concert dance, and now we get really, really briefly, really quickly, I promise, into the 30,000 foot view. Inside of a dance company, the dance company has to get bookings for the company so that they can stay afloat. It's not the ticket sales for them, it's the ticket sales for the presenters. So the idea is every dance company, the artistic directors and executive directors are auditioning the company for these different venues around the country where they can be put up. And so they're all coming and looking at the company. The presenters are going, well, I don't know if my demographic will like, I don't know if Tulsa will really like this company, or what they're into now is, something else. I'm just not sure. So part of it is the marketability of the dancers. Are the dancers stunning? When we look at the pictures, when we look at the marketing and the press materials, do we get excited? Do we look, are we bowled over by the pulchritude of that body in space, in the air, or in the jump, or in the whatever? All of that becomes part of the thing. So you then, as a dancer inside of that company, are also being used to sell the company so that the company can provide you the number of work weeks that they promised in the contract. So yes, there's a piece of that there, absolutely, that we can get into. And you know what, Patch and I have been really good about kind of, we have a plan and then we go with the flow. So if some of it needs to shift a little bit, I'll make sure to get it in there. But that's a great question.
Yeah.
Also thank you. She says I look, pretty good for 1,000 years old. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well,
Trying to represent for all the rest of us who are 1,000.
you've done the work. You've done the work. So thank you again, everybody who came and listened carefully and spread the word about next week. And sign on, come into the portal, make yourself a profile, sign up for the workshop, and and we look forward to all that you have to say. And eventually, this recording will be available. And I want to thank everybody on our team, Rodney and Sophia and Angelique, and and Janae for being there, quietly filling in the information. Thank you so much. And I look forward to the conversation next week. So everybody be well, take care of yourselves, and come on back. So thank you.
And feel free to get in touch if you have anything else. Ask me, I'm around.
Go to jamalstory.com.
Jamalstory.com.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.